The time is just gone, 12 minutes past 8, and it's time now to kick off our first interview this morning on News and Views. And we are staying with the gas explosion in the Johannesburg CBD. We're going across to be joined by National Taxi Association spokesperson Theo Malele. Theo, salamu alaikum and welcome.
Assalamu alaikum and thanks for having me.
Yes, wonderful that you're able to join us this morning. And clearly, it comes at a very, very difficult time. And I'm sure a lot of discussion, a lot of debate has been taking place within the taxi industry concerning what has taken place in the CBD. And when one looks at the damage, when one looks at the area in itself, a huge industry for the taxi industry, the Bree Street taxi rank, massive. And with 37 vehicles that we've learned that have been damaged. Just your thoughts and looking at this explosion and how this is likely to impact on the industry in itself.
Well, indeed, this came as a shock to us, and it has impacted, our businesses, and around, the peak hour of, the evening rush. But we should say thanks to Allah that not many lives were lost, even though there is, mortal remains of one individual whose next of kin is still to be notified about this demise. This, has had a impact also on the vendors that normally would trade next to the taxi rank and on all those that are actually trading along this corridor, which is the arterial route of the taxi industry that ferries people from the West End, the South, that are coming into the city. They use this corridor, and with it not being functional, it has a negative impact in that we do not have yet a alternative been given to the authorities. But let me also indicate that the taxi industry's operating licenses are based on the routes that have been, given to a specific taxi association to operate in. And if they go out of that route network, then that becomes a transgression. So it then becomes important that the authorities expedite the issuing of alternative routes to all affected associations that utilizes the inner city. And it is also proper that a temporary ranking facility be identified so that in return we are able to can notify our commuters as to where the taxis will be traversing and at which point would they assemble in order to board or disembark on taxis as a temporary ranking facility. This has had an impact also on a number of vehicles. I think 24 taxis were affected, and about 15 were badly affected. And we pray that the authorities revoke their SASRIA insurance on the force de majeure to ensure that the taxi industry gets, helped to get back on its feet. But we are hoping that this can only happen in the ensuing week. And there is also a challenge of, misalignment of communication between the politicians, in particular the Premier of Gauteng is not speaking the same as the MMC of Transport in Johannesburg. Neither is he talking the same language as the MMC of Safety and Security in that geographical space. So it is important that these political innuendos are done, in politicking circles and not in full view of the public, so that we as an industry are able to can inform the community masses as to which alternative routes and temporary, ranking facilities. And it would also be great that the repairs to this be undertook as soon as the root causes of this explosion are actually being identified. So we learned that experts have narrowed down the possible causes, and we can only wait until a final report is been given in that regard. And we should also pass, our heartfelt condolences to the family of the bereaved a person who was found underneath a minibus taxi after this explosion had taken place. And we also are grateful that the number of hospitalized people has now come down to 8 people that are still being hospitalized. And we wish them a speedy recovery. And yeah, that's the situation currently in the Johannesburg area.
Yes, obviously we share the same sentiments, and our condolences also goes to the bereaved family, and also at the same time a speedy recovery for those who are injured. But Theo, just you mentioned that this is the heart of the taxi industry. It's an important, it's a vital route. Looking at possible challenges that may be faced with regard to relocating, even temporarily, the taxi rank. Obviously, it's going to be quite challenging. Do we know at any given point in time that particular taxi rank? How many taxis are we talking about? Because I know it's huge, it's massive.
No, we cannot give you a ballpark figure of taxis that utilizes the Bree Street corridor. But it would be the greater part of associations from the greater Johannesburg. There should be over 30 associations that utilizes that corridor. And there is also about maybe just around 10 that actually uses the ranking facility at the Lilian Goi, which is previously called Bree Street.
Yes. Now, let's talk about the level of communication that you, as a taxi association, is having, because you mentioned that you'd like to get to normality as soon as possible. So there are major players. You speak about the provincial government. You speak about yeah, the Johannesburg Roads Agency as well, who are going to be obviously responsible to make sure that things are up and running very, very soon. At this point in time, what level of communication are you having with the various bodies and the authorities?
We had basically assembled a team of people that would help us assess the damage. But unfortunately, they were turned off, and we really do understand the rationality behind turning these people off. But then again, we should be informed, quite as a matter of urgency. We haven't had a communique with the authorities that be. I can assume that if they are not aligned in terms of their communication as leaders, how then can they communicate with us? Maybe they must just first get their ducks in a row, and once they have done so, only then can we begin to engage with them meaningfully. And assuming that this, takes precedence, that should then give us the leverage of speaking with them in the ensuing week.
Yes. Now, obviously, this is going to impact on the industry in general, and we know that with the various taxi associations, they still need to continue. They still need to carry on doing business, and we with the areas that have been cordoned off, people still need to go to work. People still need to go around doing their daily business. How, for now, how are some of these issues being addressed? How are some of these challenges being, because at the end of the day people still need to travel.
Well, look, the those that still have their cars, roadworthy, they then ferry people into the inner city. They try and crisscross using alternative routes to get people to where they're supposed to be, although not as exact as it used to be. So it's quite a challenge, but the management of this crisis, it's is not actually eluding the taxi industry, so to say. So we are managing under these trying and difficult times, and we are hopeful that a sense of sobriety will strike within the leadership in this geographic space and ensure that we get a proper, informed, alternative, decisions.
Yes. Now, this has obviously happened in one part of Johannesburg, and we know how important the city of Johannesburg, is as an economic hub of the country. And there are so many theories at this point in time in terms of, illegal mining. We've heard now about the sewage system, about methane gas. And if this has happened just in one part of the city, and we know this is a city that is well over 100 years old in terms of mining activity and all sorts of activities that have taken place underground. And again, reinforcing, Theo, the importance of the city, but also the importance of the infrastructure of the city. And, God forbid, Allah forbids that, we have another disaster in another part of the city now that we've seen what has actually happened. And I'm sure that you will concur with me that the authorities need to take this whole question of infrastructure very, very seriously, particularly when we are talking of aging infrastructure that is possibly well over 100 years old.
Yes, you're quite right. I think the basics must be done correctly. I mean, if you look at the state of the Johannesburg precinct, it leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, God forbid, there's just rubbish all over. It's just sheer anarchy. This shows you that there isn't proper leadership. There isn't a political will either to get Johannesburg back to its glory days, and this then gives all these illegal people that have come into the country a free ride. They just do as they wish, and authorities they seem not to be doing what is expected of them. If you talk to them and ask policemen and women as to why is it that they're leaving things to go on like this, all that they'll tell you is that their hands are tied because of the political situation in the country. So this has to stop. I mean, we too as an industry are not happy with the infrastructure of the ranks that are urine rigged, and there is always rubbish. There's no proper waste management. There is, however, one positivity that comes out of the investigations that were done by the experts checking on the integrity of the building infrastructure. At least those buildings are still intact. It's just that maybe the road infrastructure will just need to be stepped up, and we should make sure that even the manholes and everything else that has to do with proper infrastructure is in place.
Yes, but also again, this is all about instability because we know that the provincial government prides itself in talking about Johannesburg and even the city of Johannesburg itself, calling it a world-class African city. But from what you described, it's actually a collapsing city. It's a city in decay in more ways than one. But again, coming through to the instability, and I'm sure even for organizations like yourself, the National Taxi Association, the instability we see within the city, how many mayors that we've actually gone through. We just find that governance in general is actually lacking, and to a large extent, the politicians need to take responsibility for how it's impacting not only on the residents, not only on people that work in the city, not only for the taxi industry, but it is about people's lives. It is about their livelihoods. And with these developments, I'm sure that even with the explosion, the livelihood of taxi associations, of taxi operators, of drivers, of commuters, all of that is going to be impacted.
Look, the taxi industry, creates or employs direct and indirect, employment to just over 400,000 people. And you can imagine those 400,000 people, they have their own siblings. So this will have a ripple effect on over, on millions of people in the Johannesburg area. So, something drastic needs to happen, and pretty soon. I think perhaps, there's been a laissez-faire on the side of us as citizens by not actually getting politicians to account. I think time has now arrived that we need to say enough is enough, this far and no further. And if you say Johannesburg City, Johannesburg, it's a World African city, I would respond and say, World African city, my food.
Well, we're going to have to leave it at that, Theo. I know you and I can discuss a lot more, but unfortunately, time is of the essence. But we wish you well. We wish everybody in the industry well, and we trust and hope that things get back to normality pretty soon. But for now, we sincerely appreciate you taking time out, talking to us right here on Salam Media this morning. All the best to you, sir.
All the best, and thank you very much for having us. And finally, we are not National Taxi Association, it's National Taxi Alliance.
My apologies, my apologies. I will have to take this up with my producer, but thank you very much for correcting that as well.
Oh, okay, only a pleasure.
Theo Malele was the National Taxi Alliance with us this morning. We're going to go for a break. We come back. We'll be joined by Gaza-based activist, author and mother Rana Shuber. 120 pupils from Gaza, phenomenal, recognized for achieving 99% in their school finals under the most abnormal circumstances.